Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal, and today is part 5 of my 7-part series of how it is I came to be the activist that I am now. I covered just what I picked up in childhood, biology of sex, which was an eye-opener, and some pressure toward abortion that I felt before I was even pregnant, and then again after I was pregnant with my wanted baby. Now we're getting to the fun part, when I had my baby. I was actually in college when my daughter was born, and we had our visit with the neonatologist to get set up. I said in my last video, at the time they typically wanted you to spend 3 days in the hospital, and the midwives referred me to Dr. Darwish, who said that he'd release the baby as soon as she had a clean bill of health. While I'm in there meeting with him, I was thinking I was having more Braxton Hicks contractions. And he's like, "Don't push out the baby in my office." I'm like, "I'm not in labor." He goes, "Yeah, you are." Um, my last class of the day was a writer's seminar that was held in a conference room just off the humanities department's offices. And the midwives had told me to come in when the contractions were regular and about 5 minutes apart. And I'm just jotting them down in class. My classmate sitting next to me was a midwife's assistant, and the woman sitting across from her was a returning student, a mother of 5, Judy, who was a gem. And, the midwife's assistant kept feeling my belly and looking at the paper, and she's like, "Oh, you're going to be a mommy at around midnight." And finally, the prof said, "What is so fascinating about the piece of paper the three of you keep passing around?" And I said, "I'm timing my contractions." He's like, "What? No, you need to leave." I said, "No, I don't need to leave until they're 5 minutes apart and regular." And the midwife's assistant is like, "Yeah, she's not going to have this baby anytime soon." And he's like, "I don't want you having a baby in class." Like, I should be so lucky to just squirt this baby out in class. Ain't going to happen. But I went and called the midwife. I come back in, I sit down. He goes, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, the midwife said there's no hurry. I can come when class is over." He's like, "Class dismissed." My male classmates were every bit as flustered as he was. One of them went and got the nurse. One of them wanted to go get a wheelchair for me so they could take me out in the elevator. They insisted that I call my husband and that he drive over from our on-campus apartment that was like 100 yards away from the building. And Pam and I were like, "No, it's going to be good for her to get down the stairs. She needs to be up and walking." And they're all surrounding me and walking me down the stairs. So I got to the hospital, and the payment arrangements had been for me to have the birthing room, which was cheaper, and then go to a semi-private room, and everything was set up. And I was going to go with natural childbirth as, birth mother type. And one of the things I loved about the midwives was how much they respected what I wanted at my core. Because at first I had a nurse came in and taught me a different breathing technique than the one I'd been taught in a prepared childbirth class, and that actually helped me even more. But it got to the point where during contractions, my body was spasming and I was curling up like a boiled shrimp. And I said, I want meds, I want meds, I want meds. And the midwife came over and she spent about an hour talking to me between contractions. And she said, "You wanted to go with natural childbirth. My experience is that women who want to go with natural childbirth tend to be regretful afterward if they go for, a lot of anesthesia. If they get what do they call it when they give you the injection in the spine? I can't remember right now what it's called. Or when they get a lot of pain meds." And I don't want you to be feeling regret afterward. I want you to be making the decision based on this new information, which is how much pain you're in. I don't want the pain to be making the decision for you. And that's when she called Nisintil. And she said, what that does is it just takes the edge off the pain enough that my prepared childbirth breathing would once again enable me to control the pain. And I decided that was what I wanted. But as we were gearing up for that, we started having fetal distress. And they were going to wheel me over to labor and delivery. Like, are they going to do a C-section? They can do one right about now. They don't even have to anesthetize me. Just cut me open and get this baby out. And Pam, the midwife, was laughing and patting my hand. She said, you'll be fine. They took me in. They took me across the hall from labor and delivery. They put an IV in my hand. I hadn't had an IV at that point. And then they gave me a little bitty baby syringe, just a tiny shot of this Nisintil. Took the edge off the pain. I was back on top of things, and Pam could barely get her gloves on to catch the baby before I was ready to push. And I was having to huff and puff so that Pam would have enough time to get her gloves on. But that's something I want to stress. The abortion lobby seems to take pride in selling abortions to pro-life women. And that would be like Pam, who knows that you're going to regret it later. Just fine, well, epidural, that's what it's called. Fine, we'll give you an epidural. Knowing that her patients had regretted it later. Pam wanted me to be the one making the decision, not the pain. And if you really are for choice, you should be for the woman making the decision based on her core beliefs and not have the fear be making the decision for her. But at any rate, my baby came out healthy as could be. I was healthy as could be. The semi-private room that I booked was being painted, so it wasn't available. They stuck me in, I forget what it was called, but it was the room that went with the birthing room, and it was sweet. And because I'd made all my payment arrangements in advance, they billed me for what I'd arranged for. So I was able to make payments according to my plan and pay for everything. And I was sent home that evening. And my daughter was everybody's baby on campus. Now, I bled heavily after I went home. The midwives did not want me driving. They said, stay in bed. My husband got tonsillitis. Judy, my classmate, brought a casserole every day. She came in, she tidied up, and put the casserole in the oven for me. And that made such a huge difference. And again, this is the sort of stuff that pro-life centers do for women that the abortion lobby wants to not make available. They don't want women to know that the kinds of options are available that people made available to me. They don't want women to know about the free car seats. They don't want them to know about making payment plans or about ways that you could cut down your costs. They don't want them to get hooked up with support for somebody to bring them casseroles after they've had their baby, because that abortion clinics sell abortions. At any rate, I still wasn't supposed to go to class. My writer's seminar, they came and they had class in my apartment, and of course everybody gurgled and cooed over the baby and made a big fuss over her. She was adorable. And when I needed to study, the ladies in the cafeteria, of course, were in love with my baby. And whoever was at the cash register liked to hold the baby while I went and had lunch and studied with my friends. So it wound up being an amazing experience. My parents held my daughter at my graduation. When I got my diploma, I went up to shake hands with my advisor, and he caught me up in a huge bear hug. It was an amazing experience. And Feminists for Life in particular, of all pro-life groups, is one of the ones that's fighting hardest for resources on campus for pregnant and parenting students, so people can have the kind of support I had. Now, after the baby was born, my husband decided that the best way to make sure he had a job and we had housing and medical care was to join the Army, and we were ready to launch our little family.